Welcome to Suburban Warrior, the podcast that will impact, inspire, and empower you to transform your mindset and become the badass warrior that you are. I'm your host and fellow warrior, Chrissy Pfeiffer, former clinician and corporate marketing exec turned multi-passionate entrepreneur, performance and life coach, and mom to 4 not-so-little warriors. Each week, I will bring you honest conversations with inspiring guests to share their stories of resilience, optimism, success, and simple yet effective strategies so that you transform your thoughts and change your behavior to get the results you want in your life. You will be empowered to take action, warrior up, and believe in you. Let's do this. What's up, warriors? Welcome back to another episode of the Suburban Warrior Podcast. I am your host, Chrissy Pfeiffer, and I am back this week with another amazing suburban warrior here to share her story with you. And we are going to talk about all things kitchens, which is going to sound so interesting and so fun. And let's be honest, as women, as moms, we spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So I'm so excited about my expert this week. Camille Finan is an author, podcast host, and CEO of Kitchen Remodel Rockstar and host of the Ugly Kitchen Challenge. Over her 35-year span as a carpenter, she has helped over 10,000 women create their kitchen design dreams. Camille began her journey as a business development consultant, helping small business owners achieve success. A desire to get back to the basics resulted in a love of DIY and carpentry, and she promptly joined the Carpenters Union. Since then, Camille has built a flourishing kitchen remodeling business of her own, her goal being to empower women to remove stress and save money when planning their next kitchen. She used her problem-solving skills to create a new and better way to look at kitchen design. This unique design from the inside out system guarantees 99% functionality and brings the joy back to cooking. On the Kitchen Sink podcast, Camille shares inspiring stories around kitchen design, planning, and how to bring back the heart of the home for regular families that are left out of the expensive HGTV experience. Often called the husband whisperer because she has a knack of convincing husbands to move forward on the remodel, she loves cocktails, cooking, and the antics of her 5 playful cats. Welcome to the podcast, Camille.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on. You know, you are first carpenter here on Suburban Warrior. I think that's pretty badass, if I can say so myself. So I'm super excited to hear your story. And I'm really thrilled to hear all things about kitchen and kitchen remodels because, you know, I think this day and age, so many people are doing so many amazing, unique things. And let's be honest, it really is all about functionality and loving the space we're in and moving around it and feeling joy while we're in it. So I'm so excited to talk about all things that. So let's first start by hearing a little bit about you and, you know, your story and how you sort of got into this business.
Yeah. So it's a pretty non-traditional way, I think. My dad was, I was a daddy's girl and my dad was a contractor and he was kind of unusual because he did both things. Most of the time you're either a rough contractor or a finished contractor. He was unusual. He was a general contractor who built the entire house, but also was very good with finish work. So he built cabinets from scratch and doors from scratch and windows from scratch and all kinds of creative stuff. So I grew up when I was little watching him do a huge variety of stuff and participating. And so that was kind of my first love with creativity and using your hands and building stuff. And then unfortunately, he left our family. And he cheated on my mom and he left. And so that was like a big heartbreak for me. And it started kind of a journey of one, being super independent, not being worried about taking on extreme risk because of course I was hurting and I was trying to prove something to him. And so that really has been a driving force actually in my life for a long time. It took a lot of therapy for me to finally figure out what was going on, but that's really what started it. And so because he left, I didn't want anything to do with construction. So I actually went to business school and wanted to be rich and famous and be an entrepreneur and take care of myself, right? Not have to need anybody. And that was a direct result of him, right?
Yeah,
and then about a couple of years in, I was very successful. I was really good at problem solving and starting businesses and doing marketing, but I got super burned out on that. And I kind of crashed and burned, had a little bit of a nervous breakdown and basically burned that whole business to the ground and had to start all over again after spending a lot of time and money getting 2 bachelor's and a master's degree in marketing. Like, I just was on a completely different trajectory. And my sister was the one who was like, for mental health, like all you do is remodel your houses, remodel your boyfriend's houses, remodel your friends' houses. Like, why don't you think about just being an actual carpenter like dad was? And I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. Right. And I thought about it. And I just kept like, I couldn't get the idea out of my head. And so eventually, after I got tired of complaining to myself and everybody I knew about my life, I was like, okay, I'm just going to try this. And I walked onto a job site here where it's really quite hot. It was like 110 degrees. I was like 110 pounds. I was short. I looked like 12 years old. I've always looked really young. I mean, I'm 55, but I looked really young then. And like, I did not look like any type of carpenter you would ever imagine could do anything physical. But I was tougher than I looked, and I was really determined, and I was desperate. Honestly, I was like sick of my life, sick of complaining. And I walked on and I just asked for a job, and they had me digging ditches in the weather. And I just kept coming back each day. And I just fell in love with physical activity. I remembered what I used to love doing with my dad. So that was like a big, huge spark of like the whole next 30 years of my life was I then joined the Carpenters Union. I worked, I left the union because I kept kind of getting held back. And, this was a long time ago before Instagram, before you saw girls doing stuff on Instagram with wood and tools. Like,
Exactly.
there was nobody else that I could look to. And so it was really hard. And that sheer determination to prove myself and prove to my dad, basically, right, that I could do this is what got me through. So not necessarily the healthiest way to do it, but it did get me to where I am today. And so then eventually I fell in love with cabinets and countertops in the union and really fine finish work. And because I had a business background, I was like, I can make a lot more money doing this myself and I can do it better. So I just left and I started my own company. And then I figured out ways, because I still had that business background, that problem solving part of me that had spent a lot of time developing that. I just saw problems like everywhere in the industry. Like I could just see ways to do things better in every aspect of that: customer service, the actual functionality, the kitchen, building it better, finishes better, working with contractors better, job sites doing better. I mean, I just basically improved the processes that I saw my bosses doing, and I fine-tuned them to work for myself and for my clients. And I was known for really targeting just the woman of the house, which is unusual in the industry, believe it or not. So I just really fine-tuned the ability to really solve problems for women specifically. And I've always loved cooking. So I've been, if I wasn't a carpenter, I'd probably be a chef, like honestly. So that combination of problem solving, love cooking, love helping women, it was like the perfect mix for me to build a business.
The trifecta.
The trifecta.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So
that's a long answer to a short question.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer. And I want to thank you for being vulnerable and telling your story in its entirety and telling us about, your background and what happened with your dad. And then also, where you felt, I don't want to call it a failure, but where with the businesses where you weren't feeling, where this is where you wanted to go. And because a lot of people experience these quote unquote failures in life that I don't, whether they're ashamed of it or feel like they failed.
Ashamed.
And
for years.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah. We stay in this place of shame, not realizing that it's really from these failures that as we just start to go through it, that's really where we can realize like our greatest triumph. So, and I think it's also really amazing that you were able to sort of unpack a lot of that past trauma of yours. I'm sure it took years and years.
Oh yeah.
But
I still have daddy issues.
Exactly. I mean,
that part's not over, but
how can you not
now to realize like intellectually, like, okay, I did a lot of stuff to get his approval, and
exactly.
But it made me, I mean, your show is, about warriors, women warriors.
Yes. Right.
That's part of what makes a warrior, is like that just diamond in a rough, like pressure over a long period of time. That's what's made me so good at what I am, is because of that stuff. So,
exactly. exactly. And using that to, really propel you for good, and knowing that, it doesn't define who you are, right? It just, it's part of you, and it will always be part of you forever,
Yeah.
but it doesn't define who you are. So thanks for sharing that, because it's a really important part of your story, So, okay. So then you get into kitchens, and you are really, I love that you really niched yourself in your business. I know they always say you have to niche to be rich. And I think that, it's really important to find what you're super passionate about and focus on that. And kitchens are really fun, right? I mean, kitchens are the heart of the home. They have become the place where everybody hangs out all the time. I mean, yes, we cook in them. Yes, it's where we prepare our food, but it is, I mean, no matter what, when you have people over, like you can have like a million other rooms, but everyone wants to hang out in the kitchen.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's become that part of the home. So I think it's amazing that you have really focused your business there. So let's talk kitchens, because I feel like it has evolved over time, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us what you have seen. I mean, because you've been doing this for, 30 years. Yeah. What have you seen as sort of the evolution of the kitchen?
Well, when I first started, the expectations were way lower. I can tell you that. Like, to satisfy a woman, I didn't have to try that hard. I mean, I still had to do beautiful kitchens, and I had to, have a really good functionality, but it's definitely evolved. I think our whole society has evolved with this whole like level of perfection that we expect out of everything: our marriages, our children, our jobs, our careers, our families, our houses.
Yeah, so
that
true.
Level of constant, when you just keep staring at something and you like whatever, like you just, that level of fascination, but also obsession about perfection in our society. Like, I spend a lot of time now getting women to not be perfectionists. Like, honestly, like, you don't need a perfect kitchen to be thrilled with your kitchen and to be super excited about it. So I definitely spend a lot of time with mindset issues, with getting women to have realistic expectations tied to how much money they have, how much time they have, how much effort they want to, that's a big sacrifice when you have a full remodel. It's like months and months and months of stuff and people in your house. And, so it's like, we have to be realistic about it. And so I spend a lot of time on that. And I guarantee you nobody else does. No other contractors talk about the stuff that I talk about. So I talk about a lot of the like emotional things that go on in kitchens. I call it kitchen therapy. So I do a lot of just kitchen therapy. Whereas in the past, I would just like get a deposit and I'd show her the sketch and she'd be like, oh my God, I love it. And we'd build it. And then that would be it. Now it's like, I mean, every detail has to be perfect to her for her to feel happy. Yeah. So I spend a lot of time on like, that's actually not where the happiness comes from.
Wow. So, I love it. It's like the mindset.
Yeah. Design trends has always been the same. Women love white kitchens. They will always love white kitchens. White. That has never changed in 30 years. So the only real difference is that there's no oak anymore. There's no dark colors as much, except for like, you have a beautiful black bookcase behind you, which I love. So like spots of color, a darker island, two-tone colors. Those things have changed. Different colored countertops with the cabinet. But other than that, like a lot of it has stayed the same, except for that just extreme expectation of what a kitchen can do for your life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's so funny that you, my friends and I joke all the time, like every time you have people over, you have to like empty all the trash and put everything away. Yes. Like your house can't look lived in. Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
I mean, and growing up, we would have people come over all the time, drop in.
Horrible.
Parties,
like laundry in the living room.
Yeah, like, no one cared.
Nobody cared.
Yeah. It's so different. Okay. So tell us, all right, if someone is doing a kitchen remodel or they're thinking about remodeling their kitchen, like what are like the top mistakes that some people make while like going through a kitchen remodel, right? What are the things we want to avoid?
Yeah. So I'd say one of the biggest things is this, which kind of stems from perfectionism, is this concept of like all or nothing. It has to be everything or I'm not going to do it. Okay. And so what ends up happening is women procrastinate. They think about it way too long. They spend months and years, quote unquote, planning it, trying to think it through. But what just ends up happening is all the costs of everything go up. And so they basically price themselves out of the market. And versus my approach is to figure out the really important things first, which is the cabinet layout, because the cabinets are the most important part. They're the biggest expense. They're the longest lead time. And as a cabinet maker, like, I'm unusual that I'm telling people to buy your cabinets first. And so I have a process that I call DFIO, designed from the inside out, where we literally hand sketch with real numbers, a real tape measure, and it's to scale, but you don't need a computerized drawing. You don't need every single detail figured out to start.
Yeah.
And so, especially after because of COVID, like, it used to be as a cabinet maker that I could give you a quote and I would know what the cost of my plywood was, my finish work, my hinges, my slides, like, those things would maybe go up once every 3 years, maybe, because we're buying wholesale, we're buying a large volume. Now it's like every 2 weeks, my plywood goes up. Yeah. Every month and a half, my handles go up. Like, it's completely random now. It is just constant increase in prices. So it's changed my approach, where I just really try to get women to not sit in this cycle of just sitting and thinking about it for months, because it's just going to cost them a lot more money.
Yeah.
So that's the first biggest mistake, is they wait too long, and they think they have to hire a designer to do this very expensive computer rendering. You don't need a computer rendering to figure out your space in your house. You just don't. You need a tape measure and a cabinet maker who understands how to create the right flow and all that. So, and then the second thing is they don't think about organization first. So that's, again, what's different about my approach is you may come to me with I want white and a green island or something. And that's great. But those things are the easiest part to figure out. The look of the outside look, it's the internal functionality that most people assume that a kitchen designer is doing, or a general contractor is doing, or a builder is doing. And unfortunately, it's just, I've been talking about this for 30 years. Those people don't do that. They should do what I'm doing, but they don't do what I'm doing. So what I do is I actually assess what you have already. I assess where the problems are, and I show you what's wrong with the kitchen, not just a general feeling like I don't like my kitchen. I show you exactly what's wrong. And then we figure out how to solve the problems that you have in the existing space so we don't replicate them. Then we move on to how to make it look pretty, because that's actually the simplest part, is the outside portion, like the colors, the style is the simplest part of it for me. So that's the big thing, I think, is that they assume that the functional part is going to be baked in just because they're buying new cabinets.
Right. Makes sense.
And it's a natural assumption. Like, if I didn't know what I know, I would assume also that if I spend $6,000 or $7,000 on a kitchen designer and she does a beautiful computer rendering for me, I would assume she's thinking about where I'm going to put my stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Like, she's just not.
Especially because
make it look really pretty so I can take a great Instagram photo and put it on my feed.
Right.
Thinking, so that she can get more clients. Right.
Right. And there are so many different insides, right? There's so much functionality that you can add to a kitchen these days that I feel like, I just went through building a house not too long ago, and you don't know as a person,
you don't know what
you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's available. And then when you find out, you're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. So it really is internally, like, what's inside the cabinets that really matters, but you're not, I get that. You're really focused on what the outside looks like, when really the inside is what you're going to be dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah. And speaking of, you just built a house, I do a lot of work with the other thing that I think people do. Well, it's not that it's their mistake. I don't know what else they would do unless they knew of me, right? What's unique about me is I'm really a kitchen coach. So I created this concept of a kitchen coach, which is like a in between. It's like, I'm the person you come to before you talk to your architect, your kitchen designer, your builder. Right. I actually help you discover the things you want and then explain them to you, because most people don't. And you're already deep into the process, and you have a designer who's not thinking about where are you going to put your Ziploc bags? Your architect does not care about that. But that's actually what drives a kitchen is this specific little granular detail. So I help you figure that out first. And then I show you, because I'm a cabinet maker, I know what those things cost. I know where there's a bunch of wasted money. So I educate you about that, so that then when you put that kitchen, that layout, that sketch that we have done really quickly, then when you give that to the architect, that room fits inside the bigger house. Whereas most people build the house, they figure out the big stuff first, and then they get down, they're like, oh, now we'll deal with the kitchen. Well, now your windows are in the wrong spot, the doors are in the wrong spot. And so now you're really limited with the actual kitchen layout.
Yeah.
So it's a really common sense way to do it, but it's just not what the industry does, right?
Interesting.
So you end up with a client that wastes a lot of money because they don't get the things that, I mean, I'm not saying it happens with everybody, but I have a lot of women who come to me way too late.
Yeah.
And they've already spent a lot of money, or they've already made a lot of choices that I'm like, that wasn't the right thing to do.
Right.
So,
okay. So then on the opposite side of that,
yeah,
what are like 2 or 3 things that when you're remodeling a kitchen are like the absolute must-haves?
Oh yeah. Those are easy. There's only 7.
Yeah. Oh, so, okay.
Yeah. There's only really 7 things you need in a really great, well-designed kitchen.
Okay.
You need that cabinet sketch that creates the flow and the layout, but within that like shape, you need the right kind of soft closing drawers. Okay. And my system runs on almost 100% drawers, but they're not just regular drawers. They're the right hardware, and they're the right size. So I spent a lot of time in the first like 5 or 6 years of my company. I used to build standard like everybody else does, right? Like most cabinets are made the way they were in the 40s. And most people don't even realize that, right? Those jigs, the templates, the sizes that you buy at Lowe's and Home Depot, they're the same way my dad built cabinets in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s.
Wow.
So what I did was I was like, why? Those are too small. That size is not right. The height is not right. I can't fit my utensils in. I can't have my lids of my Ziploc bags up, and then I can't shut my drawer. Right. I can't put my towels in. So I noticed the problems that I was seeing in the way I was building too, right? And I was like, why can't we just make it a different size? So I changed the shapes and sizes of my drawers so they're different than other cabinet drawers. Okay. Then that solved most of the problems. Actually, it solved like 80% of the problems. So then that became the workhorse of the kitchen. So the drawers they're like the number one thing. The second thing is a soft closing garbage can. Yeah. Third is a cookie sheet door just for cookie sheets, a built-in refrigerator cabinet for extra storage on top, a day use pantry. This is my version of in the kitchen pantry instead of just a walk-in pantry. Okay. So I built a shape and a size that works better for your everyday stuff that you use a lot, because most people's walk-in pantries don't work very well. That's for long-term storage, but people are mixing stuff they use every day, like snacks and chips and little things, with big bulky stuff from Costco and Sam's Club. And that's where those inefficiencies start to break down, and the space is not used very well. And then people just end up throwing stuff in there, right? They just gotta give up. So I created this day use pantry. Okay. And then of course, soft closing hinges and slides. I would never do a kitchen without it. The right brand, which is Blum, BLUM. Okay. Large handles. Most people put way too small of handles on their cabinets. You should never even touch your cabinets. And a really good waterproof finish. Okay. And then where you're putting those 6 or 7 things is the key to that. Like most people don't have enough space top left and right of their stove. They don't have enough space next to the refrigerator. Like there's things that other designers will do because they have to use standard size cabinets, that they're kind of pushing in a 24-inch base or a 36-inch base or an 18, because they have to use standard cabinets. Yeah. I'm building cabinets for the space. So if I need a 19 and 7/8, I can put a 19 and 7/8 there, or 13 and 8. So it's just it's truly custom. Yeah. But my prices are still equivalent. They're still wholesale.
Wow. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's amazing right there. That's worth a call to you right there. Custom cabinets at the price of wholesale. That's pretty special. Okay. I have a random question, but like what, I feel like this is something that has changed over time. Like, where does the spice rack go?
Oh my God, spice racks. I'm so glad you brought this up. So I have a couple pet peeves. One of them is pull out spice racks. They don't work at all. They're completely a waste of time and money and expense. Lazy Susans don't work at all. They never have worked since the 1950s. They were the worst thing ever invented, was a Lazy Susan. Right. And so I won't even build a Lazy Susan for a kitchen. It doesn't matter who you are. I'm not going to make one. I'm going to show you why they don't work. So spices, it's a super simple solution. That's why I love it. It's like $20, $25. the best way to store your spices, the ones you use every day, the ones that we cook with, most people cook with the same 5 or 6 spices every day, maybe 10, but you're not using 30 spices every day in regular cooking. So I like what's called a little spice insert. So it's made out of maple. It's got like little rows. So it's like a slight angle, and it just sets in one of your top drawers. And so you can see all your labels, because spices are little and you need to see their labels. So you can't put them in a cabinet because you need to use your uppers for what they're intended for, not for spices. And if you put it in a pull-out drawer, now you can't see their labels. So you're constantly turning them around. They're down low, it's dark, you're on your knees. You're going to do that for like a week and a half. And then if you actually cook, you're going to stop doing it. Right. And then just have this wasted space. Yeah. And then you end up buying 15 more nutmegs that you didn't need. Yeah. So I like it just in a spice drawer insert, like just right inside, and you can move it around too. So you can take it out and find the exact space.
Okay. Awesome. So it's like an insert that goes in a drawer.
It just lays in a top drawer.
In a top drawer.
And it keeps all of the little, like their little labels. They lay at a slight angle facing you, but there's rows of them.
Yeah, that's great.
Like in a really short space, like I have a fairly large kitchen, but the cabinet that I had to put it in is to the left, and it's maybe 15 inches wide.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably 17 inches wide, but the drawer box itself is 17. So it's not very wide, but I have like 45 spices in these rows that I can see all their labels, front to back, left to right. There's no hunting around. So, I mean, it's a simple, easy, cheap solution that absolutely solves the problem.
Love it.
It's my like way of designing a kitchen, not just, it doesn't make a beautiful Instagram photo, but it sure works. Let me tell you.
But it's functional, and you can use your spices and see what you're using.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. And so for anyone out there that is saying, okay, I really do not like my kitchen. It's old. I need to remodel it, but I can't afford it. What is your advice to them?
Well, most people say, but I can't afford it, but they don't actually even know what the cost is. They're just assuming the worst, right? When we do this, we assume the worst. Yeah. We let our fear brain take over, right?
Yeah.
And try to, and so that's why I created my program, Kitchen Remodel Rockstar, because it's $497. It's inexpensive compared to hiring a designer, an architect, lots of people. And you get to get your sketch done. So you know exactly what's going to work in that space, the greatest functionality. Then we take that. You can actually get real bids based on that. So you actually have an actual number. Then we work on, and that's the most expensive piece, right? So that's the like goal. Okay, let's just rip off the Band-Aid and actually figure it out. Then we can actually move forward with, okay, how do we pay for it? Are we going to finance it? Are we going to save part of it? Are we going to say like, what are we going to do? But unless you actually know that number, it's usually less than people think it is. Like almost all the time, it's less than they think it is. And then the other thing is that we do things in stages. Like most regular families have to do things in stages. So we might buy the cabinets, get them in production. And then a month and a half later, you've saved a little more money. And so now you can start the demo and maybe do the rough in electrical and plumbing. And, then by the time some of those things are done, now you can pay the $5,000 for your countertops. Like not every family has all the money up front.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So you can do it over time.
We work with lots of families that do that because that's just reality. Like it's a reality. Some of it is on a card, some of it is cash, some of it is you're financing it. We just started a financing program because we had so many women that wanted to move forward and had a chunk of money, but they couldn't do the whole thing. And so now we have financing to pay for the cabinets, and you can pay that off over 3 or 4 months, right? And there's no prepayment penalty. And so, I mean, that's what I did to put in my windows in my house, which was $70,000. I mean, that's a lot of freaking money.
Yes,
it's a big chunk of money.
Right.
And I had 20 saved. So I financed the rest of it. And then I paid it off in like 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love the idea of that. You just have to start, right? You have to start. You have to find out what it's actually going to cost for what it is that you want to do.
The problem, right?
Yes, so exactly.
I think that's a big part that's missing in the industry is like, nobody ever talks about this stuff. They'll act like, oh, everybody's rich. Oh, everybody can just do whatever. Right. and you watch HGTV, and these jobs are, $200,000, $500,000 kitchens. They're way outside the budget of most people.
Yeah.
And yet it sets up this expectation, and women, they like want that look. And it's like, well, I can actually get you that look, but if you only have $50,000 or $25,000, let's at least find out what's possible in your space.
Exactly.
That's well worth $500.
Right.
Now you're not just going around and around in circles. You know some real numbers.
Yeah.
Now you can actually start trying to solve that problem, right? Like you can actually try to figure out, how could you afford it? Could you do it? And if not, you're just like, okay, then I'm not doing my kitchen. Like that's not happening.
Right.
It's still worth knowing instead of thinking about it for 3 years.
Exactly. And being frustrated by it and not
frustrated.
Yes. So true. So true. It's like making the decision, right? You just have to make the decision and take action. And no matter what you do after that, it's growth. Either you decide to move forward, or you decide, you know what, maybe I actually do like my kitchen, or I'm okay with it for now. I'm going to use that money for something else, but it's a decision that you make and you move on.
We have a lot of women in our program who are like, that's the best $500 I ever spent, because I had been thinking about my kitchen for 3.5 freaking years. It had been driving me nuts, basically ruining my marriage because we fought about it all the time.
Yeah.
And neither of us, my husband and I, neither of us could figure out what to do. And like, I'm so thankful I went through the program and just at least got what could work in my kitchen. And we decided we didn't want to spend let's say her dream, it was like $67,000. We decided we were fine. And we were going to do it in the next house that we bought. Right. And then we just let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
So just that is worth the investment of knowing what's possible, knowing what it actually really costs, not inflated. And I think that's what's different about me and my kitchen coaches, is because we're not designers just trying to make it look beautiful for ourselves, to take beautiful photos, to get more clients. I don't care what it looks like to me. I'm trying to make it as functional for you and to bring your dream to life. I'm not using your pictures to sell to get more clients, which is unfortunately what happens in the designer industry. Is I can tell you, the designer has to make sure that thing looks like a showstopper. Yeah. Right. Unusual materials. And so all those things are the most expensive things you can put in a kitchen. And she's doing it because she needs a gorgeous portfolio photo. She can't just do a regular white kitchen with a gray countertop. Right?
Which would look beautiful. That's not going to be anyone's
enough for her portfolio. Right. It's gorgeous, but it's not different. It doesn't look like a designer did it. Right. Yeah. So I see that happening a lot in the industry. Whereas what I'm doing and what kitchen coaches are doing is like, we're not vested, because we're not literally, we're not necessarily making your cabinets, right? We help you find other people if you don't want to get cabinets from us. So we're really like a coach on your side. We're like your advocate to get your best version with the money you have, which is very different, because unfortunately, if there's designers listening, I'm sorry. I know you probably think I hate you, but, and I'm not saying all designers do this, but a lot of designers are very, egregious. What's the word? They do not take their clients' budgets to heart, and they overspend what their clients can actually afford. I see it happen a lot, right? And they pressure their clients into spending more than they can actually afford. So we do the opposite. We're like, if you say you've got a $50,000 budget, I'm like, okay, how could I do this for 35? Like, what could we do for 35? So that's what we're doing on our side. So it's just a very different approach.
Very different approach. It is a different approach. Well, Camille, I think that what you're doing is awesome. I love that you're sort of designing from the inside out. Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And I love that you're thinking about bringing joy to women and empowering them in their own homes so that they're finding joy in their spaces each and every day. So guys, if you want to find Camille, her website is kitchenremodelrockstar.com. And she is on Instagram at Dream Kitchen Coach. And we will certainly link all of this information in the show notes as well. And she has a podcast called the Kitchen Sink Podcast. So Camille, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. And I loved our conversation.
Yes. Awesome. I love it. It was really fun to talk to someone who really loves kitchens.
I mean, I do. I think kitchen is the heart of the home. So it was really an awesome conversation. So thank you guys so much for joining us this week on the Suburban Warrior podcast. We will be back next week with another amazing Suburban Warrior. And until then, have an awesome week, and we will talk to you next time.